Hear that? There's nothing like flipping through a newspaper to get the local news. Something timeless about it. Mm-hmm. I think, anyway. It's pretty cool.
That's
anyway,
a nice little shameless plug right there.
Welcome back to the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast, the one and only Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast. Josh Weaver back with Daniel Zapata over there.
Hello.
And Marcus Hood over here.
Howdy.
We got through week 1 of the high school football season here in Central Texas. And it was exciting. It was different. But it was still football, so it was great to be out there. I don't know about you guys covering games, but
good to be back.
Nice to cover something.
Yeah, it felt great to just cover football, even though, like we mentioned before, football's kind of been on the same schedule. It just feels like it's been so much longer since we've done it, but it was great to be out there.
Yeah. I did notice that the UIL sent out some reminders this week urging fans to continue to follow all the protocols that they've put in place, masks and keeping a distance and not congregating, all these things. It's going to be key for all that to stay in place for this season to keep going. I know I've seen some games get canceled in other areas this week, but so far we've kind of avoided that as we sit here and talk on a Wednesday night.
Knock on wood.
Yeah,
exactly.
But if you missed any of the scores from last Friday and Thursday, I guess, we started off Thursday night with Lake Belton playing its inaugural game against the Stephenville JV, and Lake Belton rolled in that one 48-0. And then we moved on to Friday night. We had some good games. Academy held off Rogers 20-15 in that opener. Holland beat Burton 27-12. Salado beat Troy 46-27. Salado's rushing attack looked pretty good there.
A lot of offense.
Yep. Marcus just making sure our microphones are working. We have to do that here. We have to make sure our microphones are working. We have to make sure that air conditioner isn't too loud.
Phones are on airplane mode.
Make sure our phones are in airplane mode. All the good stuff.
We do a lot here.
Yes. Carrying on here, Burnett beat Gerald 46-6. Llano beat Gatesville 45-16. Rockdale won its game, beat LaGrange 40-14, but did lose its starting quarterback, and we'll touch on that likely coming up here. Millsap beat Bruceville Eddy 54-14. Hamilton 54-0 over Moody. Jewett Leon.
You never know until all these little Texas towns.
Beat Rosebud Lot 49-34.
Don't overthink them sometimes.
But Rosebud Lot putting up 34 points was pretty impressive.
Right.
Freshman quarterback, who we'll touch on as well, come up in this podcast, was pretty impressive. Hubbard beat Bartlett 54-6. Granger blanked Axtell 32-0. And in six-man Cherokee, 57, Buckholz 12. A reminder to all the Temple and Belton fans, those seasons haven't started yet, but we're getting close. September 7th is the first day of practice for 5A and 6A, so the Wildcats and Tigers will be getting started here shortly.
That's almost here, man.
I know it.
Yep.
I know it. Any thoughts on last week's games? Anything stand out in particular before we run down this week's slate?
Well, I guess I'll just start at Holland. That's the game I was at, and there was a lot of questions about their offense coming in, and the Holland really just kind of showed that they're still all about defense. I mean, that defense is stout. I think they're still, they have the area's best totals in defense, allowed only 122 yards to a Burton team that's going to be pretty tough to beat in that out of District 13 2A Division 2. They're in there with Granger, Milano, Iola, Somerville, Bartlett. I mean, that's not a bad Burton team, but Holland's going to, I talked to Coach Talbot afterwards. Still going to take them a while to kind of get everything about their offense, what they can do, what they can't do. And even before he talked to me, he was talking to his offensive coordinator about things that they can still adjust. So, coaches are always thinking Holland's going to be up there again. So I thought that was a pretty good win for them, pretty impressive.
So they're operating out of that wing T offense you said?
Yeah. It's basically a quarterback under center, kind of a single back, and then the two wings, a lot of motion moving around. And I think they had like 8 ball carriers last week, 8 or 9 different guys carrying the ball. I mean, they have a lot of personnel in there, so they're gonna. I mean, it's just a matter of. Nice thing about Holland is once they get some of those kids to the edge, a lot of kids don't realize. A lot of people don't realize there's a lot of speed in Holland. I mean, you didn't have to see a lot of it last year because some of those backs were just bruisers. Once they got open, they could make some things happen. But this year, I mean, yeah, once they get to the edge, they're going to outrun a lot of kids.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, speaking of outrunning a lot of kids, there's a lot of running by running backs in the Salado Troy game last week.
Yeah, some notable runners there.
Yeah,
so.
which was a lot. The score was higher than I thought it was going to be. Even though those offenses do have that capability of putting up points. I mean, I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a defensive battle, but Salado with running backs Reed Vincent, Noah Mesher, and Caden Strickland put up over 400 yards rushing against Troy, which has its own stellar running back in Zach Urbacek, who had 284 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Oh, is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but Salado's slot T rushing attack just wore down Troy. Troy just kind of, this year at least, couldn't match up against it as they have done in the past. Salado's win snapped a 2-game winning streak for Troy, and Troy's kind of had an upper hand in that series over the last 10 years anyway. So Salado coach Alan Hare was very excited about the way his team played, and rightly so. They looked almost in midseason form in a way on that offense. They were the defense too. Even though they gave up big plays to Urbacek, everything else they took away, and Troy was basically one-dimensional, which is sometimes that's okay for Troy because of Urbacek, but the Trojans are gonna need something else down the road.
You gotta have something to kind of counter every now and then.
Yeah, so a good victory for Salado there, right off the bat at Crusader Stadium, UMHB's Crusader Stadium. They got a tough test this week, which we'll talk about a little later on, and Troy doesn't have an easy go of it playing Bahia, but
No.
We'll get into that in a minute. But Zach Urbacek left off, or started back up where he left off last year, that's for sure, and we'll see what happens there.
That's why he's getting those D1 offers, as everyone keeps talking about.
Yeah,
So.
well, I think he committed to Sam Houston.
I think I saw that.
So-
Yeah, that's nice for him.
Yeah, definitely.
Very deserving kid.
Southland Conference.
Definitely. And Daniel, you were at a pretty good game, which is lower scoring than we thought it was going to be, at least compared to last year.
Right. Yeah, no, I was at Merck Field there in Rogers for the rivalry game, Academy Rogers, and that one really kind of turned out to be a which defense was going to break in the second half. Academy, I'll say right off the bat, Academy's offense has come a long way since where it was last year. The Bees had a lot of injuries to overcome. A lot of their starters went out, so it's definitely hard to get into a rhythm when you're just kind of trying to put bodies on the field. But they looked really good. Jerry Cephas, the senior quarterback, last year was kind of in a quarterback battle for a little bit, but he seems to be the kind of undisputed starter, and he looked every bit of it. He was able to find guys in the passing lanes, and then when nothing was there, he was able to do what he does real well and be that dual threat guy who's just going to find a running lane and get you yards with his feet. So he presented a lot of problems for the Rogers defense. Academy's also got a good young running back, a junior, I believe, Darion Franklin. He put up some big numbers. Their top receiver, Jalen McWilliams, also had a good game. So, the offense really clicked overall. But at the very end, I talked to new head coach over there at Academy, Chris Lancaster, and he had nothing but praise for the defense. He acknowledged that their offensive playmakers had big plays at times, and they really shined in their moments. But really, if that defense didn't play as well as it did and didn't come through forcing 3rd and longs, coming through on multiple failed 4th down conversions, especially there in the second half and in that fourth quarter, then it's probably a different ball game. Rogers, no slouch whatsoever. They're coming off I believe, an 11-2 season, so one of their best seasons that they've had recently. Coach Charlie Roten over there he has them looking real well. he did take a little bit of the blame there. Just, he kind of said he just needs to do a little better job calling plays on offense as the offensive play caller. So he kind of took blame for some of it. It's week one for the coaches too, so everyone's going to have to kind of get in form. But overall, it was a really, really good game. I think the largest lead, for either team was, I think Academy led 20-7, I believe. But from start to finish, this one was close, and points were hard to come by. Academy is much improved. Rogers maybe a little bit of a wake-up call to start the season, but I think they're going to be just fine. And we've touched on it with Troy, Salado, and Holland, just a lot of rushers. Rogers does the same thing with that wing T offense. So, you're going to have anywhere from 5 to 8, maybe double-digit number of guys who are going to run the ball. So, both teams are going to be good. But, yeah, that was definitely a good one to start off.
There was a score I didn't mention at the beginning. Cameron Yo beating Mejia 21-16.
Oh, yeah, that turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah. The Yeoman started 6 sophomores on their defense last week, and that group held its own for the most part. I think it was 21-3 Yo at halftime.
Right.
Mejia made kind of a run in the second half, but Yo bent but didn't break there
Right.
and held on to the lead. Had a first year starting quarterback, Zane Zeinert, on offense. So a good win for the Yeoman there. And just wanted to touch on a couple other things. Granger beating Axtell, right, 32-0.
Mhm.
Thomas Rhodes, the quarterback, had quite a game. He threw for 172 yards and ran for another 160. Had multiple touchdowns.
It's pretty good.
And we mentioned, I mentioned, Rosebud Lofts quarterback. That is Jamarcus Johnson. He was pretty impressive, a freshman.
Very first varsity start.
First varsity start. His very first snap was a 95-yard touchdown run
Just
for
whatever.
first-year coach Brandon Hicks.
Go ahead and set the bar real high.
So he finished with 150-plus yards rushing, somewhere around there, 197 passing. So pretty impressive start for a freshman, and the Cougars, who were trying to, obviously put together a turnaround season.
Fun fact
out there.
about Rosebud Lott, those 34 points, that was, more than their entire season output for last year. So, new coach Brandon Hicks over there has got to feel pretty confident about that offense, and they've got some weapons. I think they had a receiver. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But
We'll find it.
Let's see. It should be
Breon Lewis.
Breon Lewis. Yeah, he had a good game. 5 receptions, 122 yards, and a pair of touchdowns. So, yeah, Cougars were looking strong. Maybe shore up the defense a little bit, but, it's week one.
Yep.
That was a fun fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
The laugh-o-meter's just going nuts.
Had to throw one of those in there at some
Great.
point.
All right. So that was week one, for the most part. Let's look at week 2 now. Here are the matchups. Let's see if I can read these. Lake Belton is at San Antonio Davenport. That is another first-year program. And these are all games Friday, by the way. No Thursday games in our area this week. Glen Rose at Gatesville. Jarrell is at Fredericksburg. Grandview at Salado. That's 2-time defending 3A Division I state champion Grandview at Salado. That will be a good one. And the 50% capacity or whatever will be filled.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
That's going to be a popular venue.
Yeah. Academy at Clifton. Belleville is visiting Cameron Yo. Taylor is at Rockdale. Mejia at Troy. Rogers on the road at San Saba. Bruce Villetti is at Crawford. Hollins at Bosqueville. Oh boy. Heiko.
Heiko, yeah. You got Don't overthink
Ding,
it.
ding,
At
ding.
Moody. Oh boy. Wortham
Yeah, you got it.
at Rosebud Lott. Bartlett at Ranger. And Granger is at Rio Vista. Idle this week, Buckholz.
That's actually Rio Vista. I'm just kidding.
Rio Vista.
Rio.
Oh man. Sometimes reading is difficult.
Yes.
Or
You said it was
pronunciation.
week 2, right? We got
Yeah.
We can't be like this already. We
Well, and
got
plus, Temple and Belton, their seasons can go past Christmas.
Yeah, but mine this year especially.
Yeah, and I think that's like the third
Yeah.
round of the playoffs. Anyway, so yeah, that is the slate for week 2. I'll jump right to the Grandview at Salado. That's a strong test for the Eagles.
yeah.
The Zebras outlasted Malakoff last week in overtime
Oh,
in that opener. But Dane Yench, the quarterback for Grandview, is back for another season. He has twice
he is still
been
there.
the offensive and defensive MVP in the last 2 state championship games. I
feel like-
Division
I
One.
feel like that guy's 40, has a family. I mean, how is he still at
Right,
Grandview?
I know. Well, his dad apparently is the defensive coordinator over there, and his dad, I believe his name is Clint, played with Alan Hare at Tarleton, and so that's kind of how this matchup materialized.
Nice.
I think, Coach Yench reached out to Alan Hare for this one, and
See, now
it's gonna
that's
be a home and home. So this year it's in Salado, next year at Grandview.
that's a fun fact.
It is. I mean, no one
Yes.
laughed though, so it was kind of like.
Well, you didn't bring it up as a fun
I
fact. You
know.
just threw it
I
out
know.
there.
I was trying to be modest.
But it was a fun fact. I'll agree with Daniel. Wasn't really a funny fact. It was just fun.
What we've learned about Grandview, or at least over the last couple of years, is that they make very few mistakes, and if they
Right.
do, they figure out a way around them quite quickly.
How many times did you see them in the playoffs
Yeah, I
last
saw
year,
them 3
Josh?
times in the playoffs last year.
Man,
They mowed down our area teams in 10-3A1.
Right.
took down what was it?
Rockdale, Yoa, and Troy. And it was just a real methodical approach. I mean, just not flashy or anything, just really, really sound. And Salado's going to have to kind of play the way it did last week against Troy. I mean, very few mistakes, very few penalties. The wing tee or the slot tee offense was, just crisp and all that. But it's
Yeah.
going to be, they're going to have to stay within themselves and be composed and kind of use the clock and all that.
Right.
A lot of times in games like this, that's real key is clock management. I mean, Salado will probably take that play clock down to like 1 second every time just with our offense. Because you want to keep a team like Grandview, you want to keep their offense off the field as much as possible.
Right.
And maybe just make 1 or 2 stops, and every time you get the ball, just score.
Yeah.
And that's kind of key.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
don't want to turn it over real quick, that's for sure.
You're only going to get a handful of offensive opportunities, so you better be sure to capitalize and, like you said, no turnovers, no mistakes, nothing that can self-hurt you.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about Salado's type of offense. I mean, Bartlett ran it a few years ago, and I watched them play Granger, and Bartlett used that offense so well. Granger never touched the ball the entire first quarter. I mean, it can work like that. Granger went on to win the game pretty handily, but Bartlett ate up the clock and scored on their first drive, used up the entire first quarter. And so, I mean, if that's the approach Salado takes, they'll at least stay in the game, give themselves a chance.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Problem was last week against Troy, Salado, I think, had scoring plays of maybe 4 of them that were 30 plus, like big hitters,
Right, yeah.
that's not a bad thing either, as long as you
Yeah,
can keep doing it
yeah.
consistently too.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
Right.
So that's one of the marquee games this week, obviously, at least in our minds. Cameron Yo's at home, making its home debut, like I mentioned before, with first-year quarterback Ziner, the junior, who's 6'4". Threw an early interception last week, but kind of bounced back and played pretty well. I think completed over 50% of his passes, almost 200 yards, a couple touchdowns. But Yo hosting Belleville, that's always a tough challenge with what Belleville runs on offense. And I mean, they're usually pretty competitive
Right.
for a D2 playoff team.
Yeah, Belleville, coached by former Troy coach Grady Rowe, who is now I think in his like 15th year as a head coach and has never had a losing season at any place
Wow.
he stopped. So,
Wow.
I mean, he gets a lot out of his players, and so yeah, that will be a tough test for the Yeomen. Belleville does like to play a team in this area at least once a year. It seems like I think they played Salado They played Salado in the
matched up
playoffs,
with
yeah.
Salado, with Salado in the playoffs a few years in a row.
Yeah.
So. But
Yeah.
but that'll be a good one. This young team kind of developing. Well, hopefully, to what Tommy Brashear thinks is at a quick pace. As they get to district and all that. So that's a good week 2 matchup for the Yeomen. The game we're not going to be at, we can touch on real quick, Daniel, is Taylor at Rockdale. Rockdale put up a pretty impressive victory last week, but ran into some adversity, and you caught up with those guys this week about that.
Yeah, I was able to talk to some of those guys. Kind of a double-edged sword, maybe, or whatever you want to call it. But on one hand, if you're Rockdale, you're really excited. You get that week 1 win. Everything looks sharp, offense and defensively. The flip side is that you lost your starting quarterback with Jace Robinson. He broke his right leg. He said he had a break in the tibia and then 2 breaks in his fibula. Had surgery on that leg on Monday. He said the doctor said everything went perfectly, just as well as it could have. So he's really excited about that. But yeah, that's definitely a blow to the Tigers. They had really high expectations for this season. They've got a ton of offensive weapons that are seniors this year, I believe, so a lot of experience. So it definitely is not a great position. But I was talking to coach over there, Jacob Campsey, and the plan is to put Kobe Mitchell now, the junior wide receiver, at quarterback. So he was the backup quarterback coming into the year. He'll now be the starter. And really, the plan is to not change the offense all that much. Kobe is someone who has played varsity ball since his freshman year. He's played primarily wide receiver, but he's also spent time at running back. He pretty much knows that offense inside and out. A lot of experience with it. So for him, really, it's just going to be about just kind of fine-tuning some stuff. Campsey said they might adjust the offense to let him run a little bit more. Jace was a pretty good runner. He was gradually improving. But, Kobe Mitchell is a really phenomenal athlete, as Campsey put it. So they're definitely going to want to take advantage of his dual threat ability. But when you still got playmakers like Keyshawn Raven, who can, go 0 to 60 in a blink of an eye, someone like Cameron Valdez, who gets a lot of attention for being one of the top running backs in the area, and then not to mention some of the guys that they're notable names but don't get a lot of highlights. Anthony Dansby, and then there's a couple of other receivers that their name escapes me at the moment. But they got a lot of weapons, so they're not going to change the offense all that much. Because Kobe Mitchell, they're going to adjust a little bit, but really it's kind of going to be business as usual. So it obviously is not in the position that Rockdale wants to be in, but nothing changes as far as what their goals are.
And there's not really good news when your quarterback breaks his leg, because you obviously don't want to see that. But
Right.
It was week 1. So they have some time to kind of develop Kobe a little bit,
Right.
At this point, but you feel for Jace, obviously, having a season ended.
And he really had
a great year last year.
I think he
3,000 yards passing, or did he get that high? It was a lot.
It was a lot. It definitely led the area in yards passing, led the area in touchdown throws. So this is definitely a stud, man. He's getting some recognition coming into the season. So, but when I was talking to him, he had a great attitude, man. Had surgery just a couple days ago, and he's already talking about I'm just rehabbing and I'm eager to get back out there, but. He kind of mentioned at the same time, I want to coach up Kobe and give him all the confidence that he needs, and I'll be here for whatever. So, if you're in that position, especially your senior year when you were really looking at being, one of the guys on your team, it can be very easy to get down, I would imagine. But he's very optimistic, very positive, and really kind of speaks a lot about his character and just who he is as a person outside of football.
Yeah, I don't really think I don't really think Rockdale needs to change a thing, because like we said, that's a senior-led team, so those guys know what they're doing. And Kobe's kind of thrown into the quarterback role, and he was only 3 for 8 passing last week as he took over, but he's going to get all the reps this week in practice, that, and so he knows it's his job now. So, you keep the same offense. He knows what to do. All those guys know what to do. They're going to carry him
Right. And
for a couple games at least, and then he'll be the leader out there.
Right.
It'll seem like, and yeah, like you said, they've got. I mean, Dansby he's one of those. I don't know how tall he is. Maybe 6'6". He's just one of those guys.
yeah, I think that's something Campsey said. Yeah.
You just throw it up, let him go get it.
Big guy.
Because there's not going to be too many guys that can match up with him and
Right.
all those other guys. So.
Yeah, and one last thing with that, Campsey did say, by putting Colby in there, he's not just looking to throw it up to one of his, big guys like Dansby or Raven. Those are guys that can obviously make plays, but he's not just throwing it at will. He said his football IQ is extremely high, and for him to be where he is and now to be in this position, he reads the defense really well. So this is a guy that probably is not going to make a ton of mistakes throwing the ball. But he's got a lot of weapons, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how they go.
Segue. It'll also be interesting to see how Troy responds after its loss in
That's
the
true.
opener. I think those folks over there were a bit disappointed in that performance last week. They didn't do a lot of the things they expect themselves to do very well. So
Yeah.
and having Mahia come in, that'll be a good matchup. Troy's, like we mentioned earlier, Troy's got to find something else on offense sooner rather than later, I think, because aside from Herbacek, that's a pretty young offense as far as skill position goes.
Yeah.
Hunter Martin actually looked pretty good at fullback. He didn't get a ton of touches, but he looks like a guy who can complement Herbacek pretty well. But Jace Carr got his first start at quarterback. They didn't really use him much as far as throwing it, but they're probably going to have to develop him quickly here as we move along and get into district, because they're going to need that component. They're going to need to throw the ball 6, 8, 10 times a game. I watch Herbacek carry the ball. He runs for like 68 yards and he doesn't come out after that. He's back and he's still in the game and he
Next
gets
play.
the ball
Exactly.
the next play.
Yeah.
And it's a long season and they want to play they want to play deep into the season.
Right.
So they're,
I feel like
you don't want to jump to conclusions, obviously, but
Right.
No, even if it's not a big passing game for Troy, you definitely want to at least hit some guys in the flats every once in a while just to keep the defenses from crowding in too much and closing the gaps.
And it's amazing though, even though defenses do key in on Herbacek, that guy, he doesn't need.
he just pinballs, man.
He doesn't need a lot of space. He finds that one little sliver and bam, he's gone.
There's been so many times I've covered their games, and he'll take a run up the middle, and he hits that first wave of defenders, and you go to mark it on your score sheet. Okay, that looks like 5-6 yards, and you go to write it down, and you look up where the crowd starts cheering, and he's still going. So it's more like a 25-30. But I think what really made that Troy team so successful last year is, like we talked about, they have other options besides just Herbacek. Herbacek's going to get you 250 plus yards a game, but last year when they had other guys like Sam Jones who you could hand it off to and he could get you a 7 to 10 yard game, and then guys in the passing game with Bo Workman at tight end, you could get it to him 5 or 6 times a game, and it would just kind of just spread it out, kind of change some things up. But yeah, if Troy wants to pick up where they left off, that's definitely what they need to do, because you can't have a guy just run it every single play, even a guy like Herbacek.
Yeah, I would look for that hunt for Hunter Martin though to kind of see an expanded role as the season goes on offense. He's a two-way player, also plays linebacker, good size, but he's he could be that Sam Jones kind of replacement. The producers are signaling to us that
they're in our ear.
We've encroached upon last year's record time for length of podcast apparently. So we'll move it along here.
Week 2, man.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have stuff to talk about, I guess. Anything else? Any other games? Holland at Bosqueville might be pretty interesting.
Yeah, Bosqueville season opener, I think.
Yeah.
Rogers, it'll be interesting. San Saba is
San Saba.
pretty strong. Rogers, just seeing how they can bounce back. They definitely don't want to go into a 0-2 hole to start the season.
Yeah, is San Saba, they're 2A1 or are they 3A2?
I believe.
I think they're 2A.
I think
I
they're
thought they were
2A.
too.
Yeah.
But they're if you want to trust, the folks out there, they're predicted to be a regional finalist, maybe a state semifinalist, and they went pretty far last year.
Yeah, they had a strong team last year.
That should be a good matchup for Rogers for sure.
The only other thing I'm really interested is kind of seeing if Academy can keep that passing attack. I mean, if you look at our area teams that we cover, I mean, they had the most passing yards, and so that's nice because they're, in that district, to kind of have a balanced approach is kind of the key.
Yeah. And I think, I will agree with the Coach Lancaster. That defense, giving up only 15 points to Rogers, that stood out to me most about that Academy victory was the defensive performance. Because they've kind of been steamrolled a bit the last couple of years as far as the defense goes, and injuries have something to do with that. But if they play that type of defense and that stingy, they have a chance to kind of.
Right. I believe Rogers scored on their first offensive drive of the game, and then only got maybe 7 or 8 points after that. So Academy's offense played well. Obviously, you'd like to see them continue that, but man, if that defense can play even a fraction of that week in and week out, they're going to make a push in their district there, and that's, like we mentioned, I feel like almost every week, that's definitely one of the tougher districts for 3AD1 in the state. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I guess we'll make a push to end this thing now, as well.
Fun fact.
Yes. Keep reading the paper.
Please
Local
do.
content most days out of the week. TDTnews.com. Other things to read there as well.
Yep.
And come back next week for another rousing edition of this podcast. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.